Queerest book. Gerard Manley Hopkins and the Man from Petrograd. In 1918, just prior to publishing Hopkins' collected poems, Robert Bridges remarked of the volume that the book will be one of the queerest in the world. It was so queer indeed that Bridges had delayed publishing it for almost 30 years. Hopkins had died in 1889. It's true that Bridges had published a few Hopkins poems in 1916. This was in his anthology, The Spirit of Man, a book intended to appeal to readers distressed by the war. And the anthology did indeed appeal to those distressed by the war, including thousands of soldiers at the front. One of these was the Gloucestershire poet and pianist Ivor Gurney, a man who spent the last 20 years of his life in a lunatic asylum. Many, including Bridges, believed Gurney to have been profoundly influenced by Hopkins, and in what follows we shall draw on the words of Gurney as well as those of Bridges as we explore the circumstances that surround Hopkins' long-delayed publication. Our central figure is, though an obscure and almost completely forgotten figure, namely Neville Forbes, Professor of Russian at Oxford and accomplished amateur pianist. Forbes is central to our exploration for a number of reasons. Firstly, he was a friend of Bridges, who also lived in Oxford. Secondly, he knew of Hopkins' poetry. And thirdly, well, that you shall see. For now, all one needs to know is that Professor Forbes, born 1883, died in the early hours of February 9th in 1929. It's believed he died alone in his riverside Oxford house, though it is possible that his manservant William Byes was also in the house at the time. Little is known of Forbes' life, except that he spent considerable time in Russia, and in the First World War served with the intelligence department of the Admiralty. Here he belonged to a section called Room 40, who decrypted around 15,000 German communications. At his death, Forbes, an almost perpetual examiner, left behind him a vast collection of old examination papers. He died, if you will, in the company of questions, and the question with which he begins in what follows is the question of why Bridges waited 30 years before publishing Hopkins. Dramatis Personae. Gerard Manley Hopkins only ever uses Hopkins' own words. Robert Bridges only ever uses Bridges' own words. Ivor Gurney very largely uses Gurney's own words. Neville Forbes. His words are largely imagined, but the details of his life, as here evoked, are all true. Examiner. Invents questions, but cites facts. Friday, February 8th, 1929. Bridge House, Botley Road, Oxford.
Within the dark and above the broken river, I hear the queerest voice. It is tangled in the water.
What hinders?
Oh, do not ask, Father Hopkins.
What hinders?
Oh, do not ask, Reverend Father.
What hinders?
No. Go hold Bridges. Ask him what hindered, what caused his delays, leaving you entombed, closeted, like the vilest secret.
Caged, Skylark. Skylark in a cage.
Exactly. Now allow me, please, the sleep of winter. It is late, and I'm weary. Weary of voices, noises, cries.
Cries like dead letters.
You may say so.
Like dead letters sent to dearest him that lives, alas, away.
One's cries are rarely heard. And your cries, Reverend Father, even when heard, do tend, like the peace of God, such as it is, to passive understanding. They have often bewildered these dead letters of yours, poor dead things of paper.
These things were here.
Indeed they were.
And but the beholder wanting.
On the contrary, Father, there are beholders. You do have readers, listeners, decoders. Not many, but some. You have them now, and have had for years. Recall the drowning boys of Flanders, the boys of the old bloodbath. They saw you, heard you, as your scrambled words were passed along the line, trench to trench, pocket to pocket, corpse to corpse.
28th of August 1916, France. Dear Mother, my best friend went out on patrol some weeks back and has never returned. That morning he lent me R.B.'s Spirit of Man. Mine for always, I suppose. And it is a good book, though. Why all that Hopkins?
Yes, why all that Hopkins? Why out there with poor Ivor Gurney among the guns and wire and mud? Why all that Hopkins? I shall tell you why. It is because, in truth, this stammering father, this holy clown, was and is and always will be a poet of the Great War. He writes, you see, in code, a code that I alone, forever at room 40, have recently cracked, unravelled. But tonight there is no need to decipher, for the walls have grown thin, and Father Hopkins speaks plainly to me, and now, right now, he speaks of a bloodbath.
Fair, fair have fallen.
Yes, the fair, the fair.
All felled, felled, all felled, not spared, not one.
Not one, not
Those
one.
lovely lads, windfalls of war's storm.
Yes, such was the weather, the ever autumn of Flanders. And wherever I look, even here in sorry Oxford, all the trees still are bare, all shaken empty of lads, those lovely lads. One has now a ragged question, and it is for you, Father Hopkins. One's question is, where, under all the weather of Flanders, was your lovely lad Jesus?
Christ our King,
Yes, what of him, dearest him?
Christ our King knows war.
I beg your pardon?
He knows war.
He does? Ah, comfort that. A mercy, a grace and comfort, and mercy and grace will serve us on Oxford night. For tonight this house, with William all without, is winter bare, empty. Correction, is empty save for a storm of questions, examination questions. I cannot sleep, you see, and so shall examine, keep watch, invigilate. Finals, as we say.
Question 1. Consider the possibility that the poetry of Gerard Manley Hopkins is unwittingly shaped by the material circumstance that he composed some of his poems on the back of examination papers. Candidates may, if they wish, make reference to the poem, the May Magnificat, and in particular to the line,
Question, what is spring?
I fear it grows late, or perhaps early, like spring in warmer climes. But what is spring? What is the end of winter? The end of death? And what is it that makes for the end of death? What is it, for example, that makes for the end of Father Hopkins' death? I refer to his 30-year entombment, confinement, incarceration.
I remember a house.
I desire, you see, to know what was the reason for Bridges finally releasing the closeted clown.
Bone house. Mean house.
And why in 1918? Why did Bridges not continue to wait? Why finally act when he did? Why then? Why then?
September 7th, 1917, Oxford. Dear Mrs. Hopkins, I've had lately some very authoritative appeals for the publication of all Gerard's poetical remains, and this afternoon I met a man who had just come from Petrograd, who was very urgent about having a complete edition.
To Oxford from Petrograd. A not inconsiderable journey in order to advance an editorial point of view. Indeed, who is this person from Petrograd? The man from 1917, the nameless man. And why has no other scholar ever noticed the fellow before? And was he English or Russian? If Russian, was he Tsarist or Bolshevik? Friend or foe? Agent or double agent? Could he even be myself? Am I the man from Petrograd?
Question 2. Consider Robert Bridges' enigmatic reference to the traveller from Petrograd in the light of the fact that his friend, Professor Neville Forbes, had extensive experience of travelling from Petrograd to suburban England. With respect to the latter, candidates may wish to bear in mind that once, when young, Professor Forbes records travelling from
St. Petersburg via Flushing and a slow train via Swanley to get home by lunchtime. I was, though, a little late. Lunch had grown somewhat cold, albeit not as cold as St. Petersburg, or Petrograd, or Leningrad, as William Say has now learned to call it.
April 2nd, 1871, Stonyhurst. My dear Bridges, I am always thinking of the communist future. I am afraid some great revolution is not far off. Horrible to say, in a manner, I am a communist.
It occurs to me now that should the man from Petrograd have been a Bolshevik, it is no wonder he should seek the publication of Comrade Hopkins, a white father grown red, as it were. His Jesus, you see, is a secret collective, a plural in hiding.
Christ plays in 1,000 places.
Plays? But in 1917 Petrograd had no need of Christ at play. One cannot storm the Winter Palace with the merely playful. All Christs must need be armed.
October 16, 1882, Stonyhurst. Dearest Bridges, be careful not to betray me to suspects and dangerous people.
Question 3. By suspects and dangerous people, does Gerard Manley Hopkins mean A. Our brave lads at the front, B.
Strangers from Petrograd,
C.
Oxford servants.
D.
Those who set examinations.
E.
Ivor Gurney.
Should candidates answer he, Ivor Gurney, they are required to make reference to the fact that this particular reader of Hopkins is now a certified inmate of the City of London Mental Hospital, otherwise known as
Stone House.
Candidates might also bear in mind that in January 1922, Gurney spent a week in the Cornish fishing village of
Bude,
during which time Gurney provided, by means of a pianoforte, full accompaniment for a program of silent films, as presented by Bedwin Brothers Touring Electric Cinema. Venue, Bude Parish Hall.
being a cinema pianist to the sailors.
Quite.
Would be romantic even to a Greek.
Indeed. Though why a Greek, I'm not altogether certain. No more than why a man from Petrograd. However, my thesis, my contention is this. that poor Mad Ivor plays for sailors in much the same way as Father Hopkins sings for sailors, drowning sailors, the men who once went down to the Deutschland.
December 11th, 1875. The Times. The loss of a Dutch land. Rockets were thrown up directly the Dutch land struck. In the blinding snowstorm, however, they no doubt were invisible to the searchlights. It is sad to know that these 200 fellow creatures remained for some 30 hours so close to the English coast. Most went into the rigging, where they were safe enough. However, 5 German nuns, whose bodies are now in the dead house here, clasped hands and were drawn together. The chief sister, a gaunt woman, 6 foot high, was heard to call out, "Oh Christ, come quickly," until the end.
Oh Christ, come quickly.
But Christ declined to hasten. Like a disgruntled servant, he chose to tarry. Something hindered the rescue of that gaunt virgin, et al. 30 hours not to be saved. 30 hours for help not to come. 30 hours.
When I say hours, I mean years.
I'm sorry, where were we? Ah, yes. Waiting for Christ, a vigil for Jesus, and all the while drowning among romantic sailors, even as we thrust ourselves through each and every crack or skylight in the hours and years of our unlives, the hours and years of our being unpublished or undiscovered in a darkened parish hall, or indeed a sorry Oxford winter palace. Do we yet see Christ? Do we? Do you? Do you, Father Hopkins? Do you, dear Ivor? What's the view from the piano?
There is, all night, movement on the stage of heaven.
Splendid.
No! Release me from this dreadful house.
Pardon?
War told me truth.
And is that the truth which is otherwise known as Christ?
I pray.
Pardon?
I pray. I pray in the name of God.
And?
I pray in the name of God to be taken out of electrical influence.
Electrical horror.
Ah, dear Ivor, you refer, I presume, to the electrical influence of the picture house.
No. I'm under wireless influence. Radio.
So nothing to see? Not even Christ?
The negation of God is here.
Ah, hope at last. For where God is not, surely Christ might just be. Hell, for example. Hell. Is that not so, Father Hopkins?
Christ visits the past prayer, pent in prison, the last breath, penitent spirits.
Ivor, I say, dear Ivor, are you penitent? Penitent in your electrical hell?
I am under 3 hells.
Answer the question, Ivor. Answer this examiner's question. Are you penitent?
Hell's evil is cured by hell's repentance.
No, hell knows no redeeming.
Are you certain, Reverend Father? Is there really no hope for hell? Well then, just assure me, Father, assure me that this world, this house, can grow no colder, no darker, no worse. Assure me of that. Assure me that this year, this night, is the worst, the very worst.
No worst. No worst. There is none.
Question 4. How far, and in what ways, might it be argued that the universe can always take an elegant turn for the worse? That there is, if you will, an infinity of worse. Candidates are required to consider this claim alongside Ivor Gurney's reference to the
Things of eternity guessed in the trenches.
Enough of eternity. Let us resume our examination.
Question 5. Compare and contrast Hopkins' lament that,
To seem the stranger lies my lot.
with Professor Forbes' confession that,
The world and I are so mutually unsympathetic that I feel sure I'm out of place. Some, such as William, might remark that others share this fate, though not perhaps Robert Bridges. If anyone is not out of place, it will be him. Husband, father, laureate, and
Simple, affable Englishman.
a fellow enamoured of,
Hashed mutton, roly-poly, and cold baths.
a fellow who has always,
Believed in living a man's life.
he, Bridges, is not, however, so sure that he believes in God, or at least in the Christian God,
Christianity
says Bridges.
is but anagrams and crossword puzzles.
Ah, I sense poor Ivor is roused by this, that he wishes to defend the Church's crossword puzzles.
It is false faith that says God is God.
August 21st, 1877. Dear Bridges, I do not write for the public. You are my public, and I hope to convert you.
Ah, Bridges, beware the queerest book. Father Hopkins here writes in order to convert. In short, he is himself a suspect and dangerous person. Hopkins, you see, is not of this parish, this England, this Oxford. He long ago left to communicate with alien powers, foreign bodies, Rome, the Society of Jesus, the Pope, and all those priests, those skirted priests.
The priests, they make the Christian religion impossible.
Quite. But is that not the point of priests? The Christian religion is, surely, most itself and most nearly an impossibility, or so I find it. Consider, for instance, the impossibility of the afterlife.
Question 6. To what extent is religious belief the subject of Professor Forbes' claim that
Some people have the incurable habit of imagining that certain things exist, even though their existence can never be proved.
alternatively, could it be argued that Professor Forbes refers here primarily to his own existence, or indeed to that of
The man from Petrograd.
I wish not to frighten any horses, but there is considerable reason to believe that our man from Petrograd might just prove to be a spectre or ghost. Forgive me, but I am in earnest. You see, scholarly attention to the correspondence of Bridges reveals that in a letter composed on October 6, 1917, exactly 30 days after meeting the traveller from Petrograd, our poet laureate here makes reference to one,
Alexander Aksakov.
a scholar who had not only lived in Petrograd,
Aksakov.
but studied ghosts.
Aksakov. Yes, Aksakov. Just this morning I discovered him in the Taylorian library. So glad the Russian gentleman is now obtainable.
Yes, obtainable he is, notwithstanding the unyielding fact that he, Aksakov, died in 1903. The Russian gentleman is, you see, a textual ghost, a trick of a library. Trick, trick!
Strike you the sight of it?
Strike indeed. For this trick of a book, this spectral Russian gentleman betrays, I say, the truth of our man from Petrograd, namely that he is, in fact, a ghost.
Question 7. To what extent can Bridges' man from Petrograd be considered a ghost? In particular, to what extent may he be considered the ghost of one Prokopy Bakalkov, the only Russian to be officially listed among those that went down with the Deutschland? Candidates must make reference to the intriguing fact that no one, let alone a Russian, has ever been given such a name. Please, therefore, consider if the name Prokopy is itself a code, anagram, or puzzle, bearing in mind that it is, in fact, very nearly a palindrome.
By the way, candidates might find it enlightening to answer this last question as if they were Ivor Gurney. Dear Ivor, you see, is familiar with ghosts.
Yesterday I talked to the spirit of Beethoven. I felt the presence of Ludwig.
Ah, dear Ludwig, our man from Vienna, as it were. Just one of a million ghosts that limped across trenchard Europe, ghosts that reached even Oxford, even Bridges, the man in the stone-cold bath. At close of war, our laureate boasts, no doubt from his bath, that he is,
Telepathic with the continent.
especially, I think, with Russia. For not only is Bridges in receipt of occult Russian communiques, but so too is his horse.
Once, about the time of the Tsar's death, our mare fell down dead.
Father Hopkins has, you see, a psychic editor, an Englishman who, notwithstanding his plate of hashed mutton, is finely attuned to the mind's more secretive ways. The Queerest book may well therefore be a spirit book.
The month, March 1919. In Father Hopkins' literary work, even societies for psychical research will lose their way, whatever lanterns they carry.
Sometimes a lantern moves along the night. Who goes there?
My soul. My soul goes there.
Goes where? Where on earth goes Mad Ivor's soul? I must know where goes a whistling soul when lost in no man's land. I desire, you see, to grasp what it is to
No war.
That is to say, not to know where the hell you are. What happens then to a soul? What? Answer me, Private Gurney, answer me, it is an order.
I, weak and hungry, lay down under unbroken wires and saw the flashes.
Continue.
A polite voice said, "Do you think you might crawl through there, through that hole,
Well, might you crawl through? What if there were a hole in time, a way out, or at very least a shelter?
Here, creep wretch, under a comfort serves in a whirlwind.
No, sir. No. There is no hole, sir. No chance of escape, sir. Nothing but chance of death, sir.
Nothing?
I'm afraid not, sir.
Nothing save death?
No, sir.
In that case, tell me this. Tell me,
What death half lifts the latch of?
and what door would that be? What door does death half lift the latch of? Will it, Father Hopkins, by any remote chance, be the door to God?
Grasp God, grasp God, grasp God, behind death.
Grasp God? Behind death? But when? When?
God knows when, God knows when, to God knows what.
Be polite. Be polite to God.
Enough. Enough. It may be dark, it may be night, but I shall not despair. I can do something.
Can something, can hope, wish day come, not choose not to be.
Yes, I shall wish they come. I shall be like Ivor in his sleepless madhouse. Ivor, who is, even now, tonight, awake, wide awake, as restless as day.
Letter to the Metropolitan Police, undated. Dear Sirs, I am mostly digging, walking, washing my body, trying not to go to bed and seeing many dawns.
I too shall soon wash my body, soon draw a bath, soon see a dawn. The dawn as dear and clear as ever I saw in the wide open light of the empty Russian steppes. Yes, that is the dawn I shall yet see, dawn in which I shall look up, spy a cruciform falcon, and say,
I caught this morning, morning's minion.
November 4, 1922, London. Dear Sirs, I write to inform you that I am involved in a tangled police case.
Question 8. Is Ivor Gurney wholly deluded? Candidates must refer to the fact that just a year before, he was arrested whilst walking at night through London's East End. Gurney carried a letter from Robert Bridges, but no other personal identity, and thus the police, for some reason, assumed Gurney was a spy.
You know, I do at times wonder whether the letter from Bridges, given his encounter with men from Petrograd, made poor Ivor less likely to be a spy, or more. Mind you, William says I dwell too long upon spies, and indeed the police. But policemen, I tell him, will come calling, will knock at the door. Ask Bridges. One day, one nervous day in midst of war, the police came asking dear Bridges to confirm that one Mr. Ezra Pound, at that point an alien daring to live within 16 miles of the coast, was indeed Mr. Ezra Pound. Dear Bridges said, yes, Mr. Pound is, alas, Mr. Pound, and the seaside alien was at once no longer a suspect or dangerous person. Or so they thought. I'm not so sure. Not so sure of Mr. Pound, naturally, but also not so sure of Bridges. Never forget that Bridges gave us
The Queerest book.
a book so devout and yet so peculiar that it is, I do suspect, a book of sacred codes.
Words within words.
I recall now that Bridges once defended the art of...
Punning in prayer.
So why not the art of encrypting in prayer? Besides, what is,
The wreck of the Deutschland.
if not a prayer within which is encrypted nothing less the invasion of England? Reader beware, I say, of a washed-up German nun. Don't forget, this
Dame at our door, drowned and among our shoals.
is technically an alien, and within 14 miles of the coast. Dead, yes, but she might yet be dangerous. As indeed might I. As a man of codes, a veteran of Room 40, I too may be one who is not to be trusted. Ah, is that light of day? The dawn of dawn? Quick, the wireless. I shall send a message in thinnest code.
Queen.
Will the man from Petrograd receive me?
Uncle.
Is the Russian gentleman obtainable?
Edward.
Or God?
Edward.
Or perhaps dear William?
Robert.
There. Done. Queen, Uncle, Edward, Robert. Queer. Gone, transmitted, straight to every cell in England.
They're getting at me. Through the wireless.
Indeed we are, dear Ivor. Indeed we are. You see?
Our wireless. It sits upon the table.
And from it, one day, we will hear even Father Hopkins speak. I know, for I have heard the river, the future. She spoke to me.
On June 29th, 1944 at 10:20 p.m., the wreck of a Deutschland will be read on the BBC Home Service.
Yes, even as we shall hit the beaches of Normandy, even as we shall drown among the shoals, and even as we shall pursue the final wrecking of Deutschland, Father Hopkins will sigh across the waves, his holy riddles once again crackling through military air. And the man from Petrograd, if still upon the earth, if ever upon the earth, will smile, his work at last accomplished. Hopkins' code finally turned upon the continent, the telepathic continent. 1944 will be 1875 reversed. Reversed. England now upon German soil. I am sorry. I have betrayed the river, the future, the nation. I must pay a traitor's penalty. William? Ah, perhaps he sleeps with another. I could, I suppose, arise and go now to the drawing room, to the piano, and seek to awaken William, but I fear that I may go the way of Ivor. Ivor at the picture house piano. Ivor, you see, was ill married to the cinema. He could not accompany silence. Do not wonder that he left. Fired.
I fear my music has come to an end. I am leaving the piano now.
I say, old sport, don't happen to have a revolver on you, do you?
Why?
I want to shoot myself.
But alas, dear Ivor, guns do not always do the job. There are, I gather, better, more reliable.
One day, at the front, 3 Germans appeared, and I fired straight at the middle one, but nothing. It went quite through him, as if air.
Exactly.
Question 9. Consider one reviewer's claim, made in 1919, that Hopkins sought words and then took shots at them.
In the darkness, I am shot at.
You too. A stuttering priest.
A warfare of my lips.
Ah, poor words. Poor dear words.
Believe them.
Believe what?
Words.
But what words now remain? And in what condition? After Hopkins, after Flanders, after Petrograd? If a word was not shot at by Gunner Hopkins, it was gutted in a trench. And if still not done for, if still it staggers, its face half lifted off, there's always the Bolshevik horde storming the Palace of Grammar. Why, just the other day I was asked,
Professor Forbes, should we not now teach Bolshevik grammar?
and I said, no, I shall not teach red grammar, nor even learn what it is. It may be that William will know such, but not I. Not I.
Tears. Tears, is it?
Yes, Father, it is tears.
Tears. I know the sadness, but the cause know not. You, though, will weep, and know why.
But what care I for why? Why this? Why that? Why the world? Why the war? Why alone? Why no servant when his master calls? Why demand? Why? It is a torture to me.
Who tortures? Who? And why?
Damn you, Ivor. Damn you. You and your why. You who saw France, saw Ypres, saw why.
Ypres, or Wye as I call it. It's the shortest village of all Europe.
In that case, Ivor, you do not know what it is to live in Oxford, the shortest village of all the world.
I hardly know what you allude to at Oxford.
No. You do know, Father, you do know. Horrible to say, but in a manner I am...
Vile.
Pardon?
At Oxford, man is vile.
And not God? Not God as well? Ah, if only he too were, as you say, vile.
Tears?
Yes, tears. Damnable tears. For I confess, Reverend Father, that something is the matter.
I cannot cut my throat is the matter.
Time, I think, to radio again. To tap out my incurable secret. Someone must be there.
Oui.
Ah, nothing.
Encore?
Nothing again.
Edward.
Still nothing.
Edward?
Nothing.
Robert.
Nothing. No one. There is, it seems, no one without. No one even within.
The inmate does not correspond.
I suspect we have no inmate now. No William.
Not any angel to stand beside me.
No. No angel. No accompanying angel. Father Hopkins, will you not pray for me?
Comforter, comforter, where is your comforting?
But Father, that is a question, not a prayer. Do better. Do better.
March, kind comrade, abreast him.
Comrade! Comrade? You pray like a Bolshevik, pray as if you were the man from Petrograd. And why should God hate the man from Petrograd? A man who wants you outed from your box, your coffin, your safe, warm Oxford coffin and closet. And why on earth should God let you out, take you out?
He Christ from cupboard fetched.
Pardon? God, you say, did what?
He Christ from cupboard fetched.
Cupboard. Christ once lived in a cupboard. Christ then was a secret man or a madman.
Oh, which one? Or is it each one?
Yes, each one, both. Secret man and madman. And what is more, at the end, bleeding man. A man who bleeds and bleeds and bleeds and bleeds.
The Times, Tuesday, February 12, 1929. Professor Forbes' death verdict at inquest. Dr. W.T. Brooks, the coroner for Oxford University, held an inquest yesterday on the body of Professor Neville Forbes, who was found dead at his home in Botley Road, Oxford, on Saturday. William Byers, the professor's servant, said that on Friday night he saw his master to bed at 10 past 10 p.m. and at 6:40 a.m. on Saturday he found Professor Forbes lying, partly conscious, in the bath, which was full of hot water, stained with blood. There were wounds on his body. These wounds he inflicted on himself. They were on his neck, his arms, his wrists, and his ankle.
Queerest book was a Collect-If radio production featuring Fred Dalmasso, Simon King and Ant Lightfoot, and directed by Fred Dalmasso. It was adapted by John Schad and based on his text Queerest Book, a dramatic monologue, which first appeared in 2012 in the journal Literature and Theology. We're grateful to Oxford University Press for kind permission to make this recording.